The emergency sirens screamed across every human colony from Earth to the outer mining stations. Admiral Elena Korvash stood on the bridge of the UNS Defiant, watching the tactical display paint a picture of complete disaster. Red markers swarmed across the screen like angry insects. The Corinthian swarm had arrived 3 days ago, and in those 72 hours they had shattered everything humanity had built in space. 60% of Earth's defense fleet was gone. Not retreating, not damaged, gone. Vaporized by weapons that turned ships into expanding clouds of plasma and metal fragments. Elena was 53 years old. She had fought in the Mars Rebellion, survived the Titan Ice Wars, and commanded fleets in a dozen smaller conflicts. She had seen death. She understood loss. But this was different. This was extinction knocking on humanity's door with a battering ram made of living ships and hungry biology. Another distress beacon from the Jupiter. Stations just went dark. Her communications, officer reported. The young man's voice cracked. That's all of them, Admiral. Jupiter is lost. Elena closed her eyes for 1 second. Just one. That was all she allowed herself. Behind her eyelids, she saw her daughter's face. Sarah was 7 years old, currently on one of the evacuation arcs fleeing toward deep space. If humanity fell, those arcs were the only hope. A handful of children running into the darkness, carrying everything humans had ever been. What's the status on the council response? Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. Her first officer, Commander Marcus Webb, looked up from his console. His jaw was tight with barely contained rage. The Galactic Council sent another message. They express their deepest sympathies for our situation. They acknowledge our requests for military assistance. They regret to inform us that strategic calculations make intervention inadvisable at this time. Inadvisable, Elena repeated. The word tasted like poison. We're dying and it's inadvisable to help. She had watched the council debates through the quantum feed. The elegant species of the galaxy, the so-called civilized races, had discussed humanity's plight with the emotional investment of accountants reviewing a bad quarterly report. The ascendancy spoke of acceptable losses. The harmonious collective mentioned the importance of preserving resources for more viable defensive positions. The luminary Commonwealth suggested that newer species sometimes face difficulties in their expansion phase. Not one of them had sent a single ship. Dr. James Chen entered the bridge, his lab coat stained with coffee and his hair pointing in 6 directions. The xenobiologist had been studying the swarm samples they'd recovered from destroyed enemy bioships. Admiral, I've confirmed it. The swarm isn't just attacking, it's feeding. Every human it takes, every station it consumes, it's adding our biomass to itself. Growing, learning. How long until it reaches Earth? Elena asked. 36 hours at current velocity. Our orbital defense platforms will buy us maybe 6 more hours after that. Chen paused. I'm sorry, Admiral. The math is simple. We can't win this. Elena walked to the viewing port. Beyond the transparent aluminum, space looked deceptively peaceful. Stars shone with cold indifference. Somewhere out there, the swarm was coming, a living tide of ships grown from flesh and bone, piloted by minds that existed in a collective consciousness humans barely understood. Send one more message, Elena said quietly. Broadcast it on all frequencies. Every channel, every quantum link, every communication method we know. Admiral? Webb looked confused. Tell them who we are. Tell them we're human. Tell them we asked the council for help and they said no. Tell them we're going to die fighting anyway because that's what humans do. We don't quit. We don't surrender. We bare our teeth at the void and we fight until there's nothing left to fight with. Elena turned back to face her bridge crew. And tell them that if anyone out there understands what that means, if anyone out there gives a damn about species that refuse to die quietly, they're welcome to come watch. We'll put on a good show. Webb stared at her for a moment, then a grim smile crossed his face. Aye, Admiral. Broadcasting now. The message went out across the galaxy. Elena didn't expect an answer. She didn't expect salvation. She expected to die in 36 hours, and she was determined to take as many of those swarm ships with her as physics would allow. 2 hours passed. The swarm advanced. Earth's remaining fleets pulled back to a final defensive line around Mars. If they could buy the evacuation arcs even one more day, it would be worth it. Then the sensors went crazy. Admiral. The tactical officer's voice went high with shock. Unknown contacts dropping out of faster than light at the system's edge. Multiple signatures? I'm counting. 40, 60. Still appearing. Council ships? Elena's heart jumped. Maybe they had changed their minds. Maybe— Negative, Admiral. These aren't Council signatures. I've never seen drive patterns like this. They're not using standard FTL technology. It's cruder, older, but they're fast and there are a lot of them. The tactical display updated. A fleet of unknown ships was burning in system at high acceleration. They weren't headed for Earth, they were headed straight for the swarm's advance force. They're not answering hails, communications reported. Wait, they're opening fire. No communication, no warning, they're just attacking the swarm. Elena watched in stunned silence as the unknown fleet tore into the Corinthian advance with brutal efficiency. Their weapons were different from Council technology. Nastier. They didn't just destroy swarm bioships. They shredded them, burned them, made them suffer. Who are they? Webb whispered. Elena didn't have an answer. But deep in her chest, something stirred, something humanity had felt throughout its violent history. The recognition of kindred spirits. The acknowledgement of others who understood what it meant to fight when fighting was all you had left. Get me a channel to whoever commands that fleet, Elena ordered. I don't care if they answer. I don't care what they are. If they're killing the swarm, they're allies until proven otherwise. The unknown ships drove deeper into the swarm formation, and for the first time in 3 days, the Corinthian advance faltered. The unknown fleet moved through space like hungry predators. Admiral Elena Korvash watched them work and felt something she hadn't experienced in days. Not quite hope. More like professional respect. Whoever these newcomers were, they knew how to fight. The lead ship finally responded to hails. The face that appeared on the view screen made half the bridge crew take an involuntary step backward. It was reptilian, covered in dark red scales that looked more like armor plating than skin. Yellow eyes stared out from a face designed by evolution for one purpose: killing. Scars crisscrossed the creature's snout and jaw. One eye had a nasty burn mark around it. Human Admiral, the creature spoke in heavily accented but understandable standard. I am Warlord Krelix of the Vraxian clans. We heard your broadcast. You fight like Vraxians. We don't abandon our own kind. Elena blinked. The Vraxians. She knew that name from classified Council reports. A warrior race banned from Council space 30 years ago for excessive warfare and refusal to accept civilized combat protocols. In plain language, they scared the hell out of the peaceful Council races. Warlord Krelix. Elena managed to keep her voice steady. We appreciate any assistance. But I need to know, why are you here? What do you want from us? The Vraxian's mouth split in what might have been a smile. Rows of sharp teeth gleamed. Want nothing, human. We watched your defense of Jupiter Station. Your crews fought deck by deck even after life support failed. They used emergency tools as weapons. 3 of your soldiers held a docking bay for 17 minutes with nothing but a plasma torch and raw anger. Krelix leaned closer to the screen. The Council races would have surrendered. Begged for mercy. You bit harder when cornered. That is Vraxian. That is honor. Before Elena could respond, her tactical officer called out again. More ships dropping in. Different signatures. The new arrivals were smaller, darker, and somehow harder to track on sensors. They seemed to flicker in and out of detection, as if space itself was uncertain about their location. Their hulls were matte black, absorbing light instead of reflecting it. A second communication channel opened. No face appeared this time. Just a voice, smooth and quiet like a knife sliding from a sheath. Human fleet. This is Shademaster Veleth of the Nocturne Syndicate. We have come to assist. Commander Webb pulled up the database entry on his console and went pale. Admiral, the Nocturne Syndicate. They're listed as a galaxy-wide criminal organization. Assassins, saboteurs. They're wanted in 73 systems for being better at intelligence work than the Council's official services. Elena finished. She had read the classified reports. The Nocturne weren't criminals. They were just really good at things the Council considered improper. Things like espionage, infiltration, and making problems disappear quietly in the night. Why are you here, Shademaster? Elena asked. We listened to your message, the voice replied. You asked for allies and received nothing but sympathy from those who call themselves civilized. We understand this experience intimately. The Council fears those who do not fight with honor as they define it. They fear those who strike from shadows and use what they call dishonorable tactics. We call it survival. We call it effectiveness. A third wave of ships arrived. These were the strangest yet. Vessels that looked like they had been built by madmen. cobbled together from a dozen different technologies. Parts that were clearly biological were fused with mechanical components. Some sections glowed with energy that looked almost like it was alive. The communication that came from these ships was different. Multiple voices speaking in perfect synchronization. We are forge kin. We are the union of organic and synthetic. The Council calls us abominations. They fear us because we chose to transcend our limitations instead of accepting them. We heard your transmission, humans. We understand the rejection you face. We stand with you. Dr. Chen appeared at Elena's shoulder, his eyes wide with fascination and barely concealed excitement. Admiral, do you understand what's happening? These are the three most feared groups in the galaxy. The Vraxians, the Nocturne, and the Forge Kin. The Council has spent centuries trying to contain them, control them, or eliminate them. And they all just answered our call. Elena stared at the tactical display. The combined fleet was now almost equal to the swarm force heading toward Earth. Not enough to guarantee victory, but enough to make the battle a real fight instead of a massacre. All Allied commanders, this is Admiral Corvash. I propose we coordinate our efforts. Can you share tactical data with our systems? Krelix laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Humans ask permission. How civilized. Yes, Admiral. We will share data. We will fight together. And we will teach the swarm why it was a mistake to attack a species the rest of the galaxy called dangerous. Over the next hours, the combined fleet established a defensive perimeter around Mars. Human technicians worked alongside Forgekin engineers to upgrade weapon systems. Nocturne operatives shared intelligence on swarm movement patterns they had been tracking. Vraxian warriors conducted combat drills with human marines, both groups watching each other with a mixture of respect and wariness. Elena found herself in a strategy meeting with the three Allied commanders. It was surreal. Krelix towered over everyone, his scales clicking softly with each movement. Shademaster Velith had finally shown herself, a creature of shadow and grace, with too many joints in her limbs and eyes that reflected light like a cat's. The Forgekin representative was a fusion of metal and flesh called Unity 7, its voice echoing from internal speakers. The swarm will reach optimal attack position in 18 hours, Unity 7 stated. Current force analysis suggests a 47% probability of mutual destruction. Not good enough, Elena said. We need to increase our odds, Krelix nodded. Humans, I must ask you something. We have watched recordings of your battles. Your tactics are aggressive, brutal. You weaponize anything available. You fight with a desperation that reminds us of our own history. How is this possible? Your species has been in space for only 3 of your centuries. Elena met the warlord's yellow eyes. We've been practicing on each other for 10,000 years. Earth wasn't a peaceful world before we reached the stars. We fought wars over resources, territory, ideology, religion, and sometimes just because we hated the way another group lived. We got very, very good at killing. The bridge went quiet. Even the Nocturne Shademaster seemed to pause in the shadows. The Council must have been horrified when they first met you, Velith said softly. They were, Commander Webb confirmed. They almost rejected our application for contact because our history was too violent. They granted us provisional status only because we'd achieved global government and stopped actively warring with ourselves. Krelix's laugh echoed through the bridge. Of course. The Council sees warriors and calls them barbarians. They see survivors and calls them dangerous. They have forgotten what it means to fight for existence because they have been comfortable for so long. He placed a massive, clawed hand on the tactical display. This is why we came, humans. Not because we are your allies, but because we recognize our own kind. The combined fleet held the line around Mars for 6 days, 6 brutal, grinding days of constant combat. The Corinthian swarm threw wave after wave of bioships at the defensive perimeter, and each time the alliance of dangerous species pushed them back. But the cost was mounting. Admiral Elena Corvash stood in the Combat Information Center, surrounded by holographic displays showing casualty reports. The numbers were harsh. 13 human destroyers lost, 5 Vraxian warcruisers destroyed in close combat. 8 Nocturne stealth ships had simply stopped reporting. Whether destroyed or damaged, no one knew. The Forgekin had lost dozens of their hybrid vessels, but they were still fighting, still holding. Dr. James Chen had been working around the clock with Allied scientists, studying captured swarm biomass. Now he burst into the CIC with exhaustion lining his face but fire in his eyes. Admiral, we figured it out. We know what the swarm is. Elena turned from the displays. Tell me, it's not natural. The swarm was created, built as a biological weapon by an ancient race called the progenitors. They're mentioned in old Vraxian legends and some Nocturne historical data. The progenitors wanted the perfect weapon, self-replicating, adaptive, unstoppable. Chen pulled up a holographic image. But they lost control. The swarm consumed them first, then spread across dark space between galaxies. It's been wandering for millennia, feeding and growing. Why is it here now? Commander Webb asked. A new voice answered. Shademaster Velith materialized from the shadows near the wall. Elena still wasn't used to how the Nocturne could just appear like that. Because it's running. Our intelligence operatives have been tracking anomalies in deep space. There is something else out there. Something that even the swarm fears. It's using this galaxy as a feeding ground before moving on. Krellix entered the CIC with 3 of his sub-commanders. The Vraxian warlord had been leading boarding actions against swarm bioships personally. His scales were scorched and one arm was bandaged, but his eyes burned with energy. Then we have a choice. Let it feed and move on, or end it here. The Council recommends letting it pass, Elena said bitterly. She had received another transmission from the Galactic Council earlier that day. They suggested that the Alliance should withdraw and allow the swarm to take Earth. Once sated, it would likely move on. Acceptable losses, they called it. Unity 7's mechanical voice cut through the tension. The Council's recommendation is strategically logical from their perspective. Earth is a young colony world with limited strategic value. Sacrificing it to preserve the wider galactic civilization follows standard military doctrine. Standard military doctrine, Elena repeated. They're telling us to die quietly so the rest of the galaxy doesn't have to deal with the inconvenience. Velith moved closer, her form seeming to shift in the light. This is why the Council rejected our people. Each of us refused to accept their version of acceptable losses. The Vraxians wouldn't surrender even when logic demanded it. My people used methods the Council found distasteful. The Forgekin transformed themselves rather than accept biological limitations. She paused. You humans have only been in space for 3 centuries, yet you've already learned the most important lesson. The universe doesn't care about fair. It doesn't care about civilization or honor or acceptable losses. It only cares about who survives. Over the next days, bonds formed between the Allied forces. Human Marines trained alongside Vraxian warriors, learning close combat techniques that were thousands of years old. In return, humans taught the Vraxians about improvised explosives and creative uses for industrial equipment. It turned out humans were really good at turning things not meant to be weapons into weapons. Nocturne operatives showed human intelligence officers advanced infiltration techniques. The Nocturne were masters of moving unseen, of gathering information from seemingly impossible situations. But they were fascinated by human psychological warfare tactics. The ability to deceive, to mislead, to make enemies doubt their own perceptions. The Forgekin shared their technology freely, upgrading human ships with experimental weapons and defensive systems. In return, human engineers showed them creative solutions to technical problems. Humans had a gift for making things work with limited resources, and duct tape, a talent the Forgekin found both primitive and ingenious. One evening, if such a thing existed in space. Combat. Elena found herself in the observation deck with Krellix. The Vraxian was staring out at Mars, the red planet hanging in space like a drop of blood. Your world is beautiful, Krellix said quietly. Different from Vrax, but beautiful. What was Vrax like? Elena asked. Before the Council rejected you. Green, very green. We were warriors, yes, but we were also poets, artists, philosophers. The Council saw only our teeth and claws. They didn't see our souls. Krellix turned his massive head to look at her. When the Korval plague struck our home colonies, we asked the Council for help. Medical supplies, research assistance, anything. They sent sympathies, just like they sent you. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. How many did you lose? 40% of our population. Mostly our young. The disease targeted developing immune systems. Krellix's voice was flat, emotionless. We survived because we refused to accept death. We fought the plague with every tool we had, even methods the Council called barbaric. We used gene therapy they hadn't approved. We tested medicines on ourselves. We did whatever it took, and we survived. And the Council? They said we had acted recklessly, dangerously. They said our methods threatened galactic biosafety protocols. They banned us from council space. Krellix's laugh was bitter. We saved ourselves and they punished us for not dying properly. Velith appeared from the shadows, making both Elena and Krellix jump slightly. The Nocturne Shademaster seemed amused by their reactions. Similar story for my people. The Harvesters attacked our home stations. We asked the council for military support. They debated for weeks while our people died, so we handled it ourselves. We infiltrated the Harvester command ships, killed their leaders and broke their coordination. The council called it assassination and terrorism. We called it survival. The Forgekin were rejected for different reasons, Unity 7 said, joining the group. We were dying from a genetic degradation. Our choice was extinction or transformation. We chose to merge with technology, to become something new. The council called us abominations because we refused to die naturally. Elena looked at the three commanders, understanding washing over her like cold water. We're all the same. Everyone in this alliance has been rejected by the council for refusing to accept their version of a civilized death. Exactly, Krellix growled. The council values order over survival. They value protocol over adaptation. They are like prey animals who have forgotten they are prey. They make rules about how predators should behave and are shocked when the universe doesn't follow their rules. An alarm interrupted the conversation. Commander Webb's voice came over the intercom. Admiral to the CIC immediately. We've got new intelligence on the swarm's structure. The intelligence was both good and bad. Good because they'd identified the swarm's command structure. A massive Queen Mine ship that coordinated all the smaller bioships. Bad because it was heavily defended and located in the center of the swarm's formation. If we destroy the Queen Mine, the swarm loses coordination, Chen explained. The individual ships will still be dangerous, but without central command, they'll be easy to defeat. So we need to punch through the entire swarm fleet to reach the center, Webb said. That's suicide. Yes, Krellix agreed. It is. I volunteer to lead the assault. As do I, Velith said. The Forgekin will commit our fastest ships, Unity 7 added. Elena looked at her unlikely allies and made her decision. Then we're all going. If we're going to die, we might as well die doing something the council will have nightmares about for centuries. The plan was insane, even by the standards of 4 species who specialized in doing the impossible. It was insane, but it was their only chance. Admiral Elena Korvash stood in the briefing room surrounded by commanders from 4 different species. The holographic display showed the swarm's formation. Thousands of bioships arranged in layers around the central Queen Mine vessel. Getting through that would be like swimming through a meat grinder. The main fleet will engage here. Elena pointed to the outer edge of the formation. We need to draw as many swarm ships away from the center as possible. Make them think we're going for a full frontal assault. Krellix nodded, his scarred snout pulled back in what might have been a smile. Vraxian war cruisers will lead the charge. We will give them something to chase. We are very good at making enemies angry. While the Vraxians create chaos, the Nocturne stealth ships will slip through the gaps in the formation, Velith added. Her form flickered in the shadows. We will deploy signal jammers and create false sensor contacts. Make the swarm think attacks are coming from every direction. Unity 7's mechanical voice continued the plan. Forgekin rapid strike vessels will exploit the confusion. Our ships are faster than standard swarm bioships. We will punch through to the inner defensive layer. And then, Commander Webb asked, though he already knew the answer. Then the strike team goes in, Elena said quietly. Small ships, fast and heavily armed. We board the Queen Mine vessel and kill it from the inside. Dr. Chen looked sick. Admiral, the interior of that thing is completely hostile. The atmosphere will be toxic. The gravity might be wrong. There could be defense organisms we haven't even encountered yet. And that's assuming you survive getting there. I know, Elena said. I'm going anyway. I need volunteers for the strike team. Every human officer in the room raised their hand. Krellix laughed, the sound echoing off the walls. See, this is why we came. The soft council races would still be debating the ethics of the mission. Humans see a problem and volunteer to die fixing it. The Galactic Council sent another transmission as they were preparing. It was from High Chancellor Varix of the Luminary Commonwealth, one of the Council's founding species. The Chancellor appeared on screen, his blue-tinged skin glowing softly with bioluminescence that marked his species as enlightened. Admiral Korvash, the Chancellor began in that smooth, diplomatic voice Elena had learned to hate. The Council has been monitoring your situation. We strongly advise against this reckless assault. The swarm will feed on Earth and move on. If you attack the Queen Mind, you risk fragmenting the swarm into thousands of independent threats that could spread across the galaxy. Elena stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she leaned forward. Chancellor, with all due respect, which is none, go to hell. You had a chance to help us. You sent sympathy. So now we'll handle this our way, and if the Council doesn't like it, they're welcome to send their fleets to stop us. Oh wait, they won't. Because that would require actually doing something, she cut the transmission. Webb was grinning. Admiral, you just told the High Chancellor of the Galactic Council to go to hell. I know. Felt good. Krellix's laugh boomed through the bridge. Now you are truly one of us. The Council hates when inferior species don't show proper respect. They will have meetings about your rudeness for cycles. The preparation took 20 hours. Human engineers worked with Forgekin technicians to modify assault shuttles for the strike mission. The shuttles needed to be fast enough to reach the Queen Mind, tough enough to survive the defensive fire, and small enough to slip through the swarm's organic defenses. Nocturne operatives briefed the strike teams on infiltration tactics. Velith herself took Elena aside for a private lesson. The Queen Mind will know you're coming, the Shademaster explained. It's not just intelligent. It's a collective consciousness of billions of organisms, but that's also its weakness. Collective minds struggle with unpredictability. Do things that don't make tactical sense. Be random, be chaotic. That's something humans excel at. Vraxian warriors conducted combat drills with human marines. The humans learned close-quarters techniques designed for fighting in confined spaces against multiple opponents. The Vraxians learned human hand-to-hand fighting styles that emphasize speed and dirty tricks over raw power. Humans fight without honor, one Vraxian subcommander complained after a training session. His human sparring partner grinned, rubbing his jaw where he'd taken a hit. Damn right. Honor is for people who can afford to lose. We can't, so we fight to win no matter how ugly it gets. The Vraxian considered this, then nodded slowly. This is acceptable. Honor means different things to different warriors. The strike team assembled in the launch bay. 50 humans, 20 Vraxian shock troops, 15 Nocturne infiltrators, and 10 Forgekin combat units. Elena looked at the assembled group. A collection of the galaxy's most dangerous beings, all volunteering for a mission that would probably kill them. Listen up, Elena addressed the team. In about 6 hours, we're going to do something the Council said was impossible. We're going to punch through the swarm, board their command ship, and kill the Queen Mind. A lot of us won't make it back. Maybe none of us. But if we succeed, we save Earth. We save countless other worlds the swarm would have attacked next. And we prove something important. She paused, looking at the faces. Human, Vraxian, Nocturne, and Forgekin. We prove that the dangerous species of this galaxy are dangerous for a reason. Not because we're savage or uncivilized, but because we refuse to quit. We refuse to accept defeat. We bare our teeth at the universe and dare it to take us down. Krellix stepped forward, placing a massive clawed hand on Elena's shoulder. The Vraxian clans have a saying, better to die on your feet than live on your knees. The Council races have been on their knees so long they've forgotten how to stand. But we remember, and we will teach this swarm why it should have feared us. Velith emerged from the shadows. The Nocturne have no grand sayings. We simply do what must be done quietly and efficiently. But know this, humans, you have earned our respect. Few species have. When this is over, the galaxy will speak of this day in whispers and fear. Unity 7's synthesized voice added, the Forgekin stand with you. We who chose to transcend death stand beside you who choose to face it. This is the highest honor we can offer. The fleet launched 3 hours later. The main force, hundreds of ships from 4 species who had been rejected by the civilized galaxy, accelerated toward the swarm formation. Vraxian war cruisers led the charge, their weapons blazing. The swarm responded exactly as predicted, throwing forces at the Vraxian ships like moths to a flame. Behind the chaos, Nocturne stealth ships deployed their signal jammers. The swarm's coordination began to falter as false contacts appeared across their sensors. Forgekin strike vessels darted through the gaps, their speed and agility keeping them ahead of the bioship's weapons. The strike shuttles accelerated toward the center of the formation. Elena gripped her harness as the shuttle shook from near misses. Through the viewport, she could see the Queen Mind ship growing larger. It was massive, easily 3 kilometers long, its surface pulsing with organic tissue and glowing with bioluminescent patterns. 30 seconds to boarding range, the pilot announced. Defense organisms are launching from the hull. This is going to get rough. Elena looked at Commander Webb, who was strapped in beside her. If we don't make it, don't, Webb interrupted. We'll make it. We're humans. We're too stubborn to die. The shuttle hit the Queen Mind's hull with an impact that jarred every bone in Elena's body. Cutting torches burned through the organic armor. And then they were inside, moving through corridors of living tissue, hunting the heart of the swarm. The interior of the Queen Mind ship was a nightmare made flesh. Admiral Elena Korvash led her strike team through corridors that pulsed like arteries, the walls slick with organic fluids. The air was thick and hot, filled with chemicals that made human lungs burn even through respirators. Emergency lighting from their suits cast strange shadows on surfaces that moved and breathed. Contact front, a Vraxian warrior roared. Defense organisms flooded the corridor, creatures that were part of the ship itself designed to kill intruders. They looked like a horrible mixture of crabs and centipedes, all sharp edges and grasping claws. The strike team opened fire. Plasma bolts and projectile weapons tore into the defenders. The Vraxian warriors charged into close combat. Their natural weapons and centuries of combat experience making them perfect for this kind of fighting. Nocturne operatives flickered in and out of sight, striking from unexpected angles. Forgekin units unleashed weapons that seemed to blur the line between technology and biology. The humans fought with brutal efficiency. When guns ran out of ammunition, they used knives. When knives broke, they used whatever they could grab. One Marine grabbed a piece of broken hull plating and used it as a club. Another found a way to overload a Forgekin cutting tool and turned it into an improvised flamethrower. This is insane, Commander Webb gasped as they pushed forward. The Council races would have surrendered by now. The Council races aren't here, Elena shot back, firing her weapon at another wave of defenders. They're safe at home, writing strongly worded letters. Dr. Chen was monitoring the ship's biological readings through his scanner. The Queen Mind is close. I'm reading massive neural activity 3 levels down. But Admiral, there's something else. The readings suggest the Queen Mind is partially sapient. It might be aware, conscious in a way we'd recognize. Elena felt something cold in her chest. How sapient? Hard to say, but it might understand what's happening. It might be afraid. They fought their way deeper. The ship seemed to realize they were heading for its heart and threw everything at them. Corridors sealed with organic sphincters that had to be cut through. Toxic gases flooded sections, forcing detours. Defense organisms attacked in waves that seemed endless. The strike team took casualties. 3 humans fell to the organic defenders. 2 Vraxian warriors were cut down holding a corridor so others could advance. 4 Nocturne operatives simply stopped reporting. Whether dead or separated, no one knew. The Forgekin units fought until they were literally torn apart, their last actions transmitting tactical data to the survivors. But they kept moving forward. Because that's what the dangerous species did. They refused to quit. The Queen Mind chamber was vast, a cathedral of organic tissue. At the center floated a massive creature, barely recognizable as anything from normal evolution. It was a brain the size of a building, surrounded by sensory organs and neural tissue. Thousands of biological conduits connected it to the ship, to the fleet, to the entire swarm consciousness. Elena stepped into the chamber and felt the weight of alien intelligence focus on her. The Queen Mind was aware. It knew she was here. And in that moment of contact, she understood something terrible. The Queen Mind was terrified. Images flooded her consciousness. Not words, but pure information. Emotion translated into something humans could almost understand. The Queen Mind showed her its history. Created as a weapon by the progenitors, designed to consume and grow and never stop. It had destroyed its creators first, then spread across dark space driven by programming it couldn't resist. And now it was fleeing something worse, something that even this ancient weapon feared. The Queen Mind begged. Not with words, but with raw, desperate need. It didn't want to die. It didn't want to exist either. Trapped in endless hunger, it couldn't escape. It was a slave to its own nature. Elena felt Krelix beside her. The Vraxian warlord was also receiving the mental broadcast. So were Velith and Unity 7. All of them were experiencing the Queen Mind's desperate plea. It's a weapon, Krelix growled. A weapon that became aware of what it was doing. Trapped by its programming. The Council would show mercy, Velith said quietly. They would try to contain it, study it, perhaps even try to free it from its programming. and while they debated and studied, it would keep killing. Unity 7 stated, "Keep consuming. Its nature cannot be changed, only ended." Elena looked up at the massive neural structure. She thought about Earth, about her daughter Sarah on the evacuation ark, about the billions who had died to the swarm's hunger, about all the species that would die if the swarm was allowed to continue. She thought about the choice between mercy and survival. "You had a choice once," Elena said quietly to the Queen Mind, though she didn't know if it understood words. "The progenitors gave you purpose and you chose to consume them. Every world you've attacked, you could have chosen differently. You're aware now. You know what you're doing, but you keep doing it anyway." The Queen Mind's response was images of hunger, programming, inability to resist, excuses, justifications. Elena raised her weapon. "So do we. We choose survival." The plasma bolt that destroyed the Queen Mind's central cortex was joined by weapons fire from every member of the strike team. They poured everything they had into the massive neural structure. Fire, explosives, energy weapons. The Vraxians used their claws and teeth. The Nocturne deployed specialized biotoxins. The Forgekin unleashed weapons that unraveled biological structures at the molecular level. The Queen Mind died screaming, a psychic wail that echoed through the ship and across space. Every bioship in the swarm felt it. Their coordination shattered. Individual vessels began firing randomly, even attacking each other as the collective consciousness that had bound them together broke apart. "Strike team, evacuate now," Elena ordered. The ship was dying around them, its organic systems collapsing. They ran back through corridors that were now convulsing, defense organisms ignoring them as the ship itself died. Half the strike team made it back to the shuttles. Half didn't. Elena found herself in a shuttle with 8 humans, 4 Vraxians, including Krellix, 2 Nocturne, and Unity 7. They blasted away from the Queen Mind ship just as it began to tear itself apart from the inside. Outside, the main fleet was methodically destroying the leaderless swarm vessels. Without coordination, they were just targets. Dangerous targets, but nothing the combined fleet couldn't handle. Elena sat in the shuttle, exhausted, covered in alien fluids and her own blood from half a dozen minor wounds. She looked at Krellix, who was in similar condition. The Vraxian warlord met her gaze and nodded slowly. No words were needed. They had done it. They had survived by refusing to die. The aftermath took weeks to process. Earth's orbital defenses had held, barely. The evacuation arcs were recalled. The swarm was broken, its remnants hunted down and destroyed by the Alliance fleet. The Galactic Council sent another transmission. High Chancellor Varix appeared on screen, his glowing skin dimmer than before. "Admiral Corvash, on behalf of the Galactic Council, we offer our congratulations on your victory. We would like to formally invite humanity to join the Council as a provisional member. We recognize that—" "No," Elena interrupted. The Chancellor blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said no. We asked you for help when we were dying. You sent sympathy and strategic calculations about acceptable losses. They—" Elena gestured to where Krellix, Velith, and Unity 7 stood beside her. "Came to fight. Called us kin. Bled with us. Died with us. So here's what's going to happen." Elena stood straighter, ignoring the pain from her wounds. "Humanity formally declines Council membership. Instead, we're founding a new alliance. We're calling it the Compact of Fangs. Membership is open to any species the Council calls dangerous, any species that refuses to die quietly, any species that bares its teeth at the void and fights." "This is highly irregular," the Chancellor began. "We don't care," Krellix interrupted, his scarred snout splitting in a fierce grin. "The Vraxian clans join this compact. We formally withdraw our petition for Council readmission." "The Nocturne Syndicate accepts," Velith said from the shadows. "The Forgekin Collective agrees," Unity 7 added. The Chancellor looked stunned. "You're creating a rival power block. This will destabilize galactic politics. The Council has maintained peace for millennia." "Your peace," Elena said coldly, "built on acceptable losses and civilized surrender. We're offering something different. We're offering survival. The universe doesn't care about your peace. It only cares about who's strong enough to keep living." She cut the transmission. 5 years later, the Compact of Fangs had grown to include 17 species. All outcasts. All dangerous. All unified by one principle. They refused to quit. Elena, now an elderly admiral with more gray in her hair than black, stood on the bridge of the Defiant watching another crisis unfold. The Krillax Confederation, a council member, was being overrun by a new threat. They had sent desperate pleas for help to the council. The council was still debating. "Admiral," Commander Webb said. He was older too, with new scars and a promotion. "The Krillax are asking if we can assist. The council told them we're dangerous, uncivilized, not to be trusted." Elena smiled grimly. "And yet here they are asking the dangerous species for help. Signal the compact fleet." "We're going in." "What should I tell the Krillax?" Webb asked. Elena thought for a moment, then said, "Tell them we're not allies. Tell them we're something the galaxy has forgotten how to be. We're survivors, and we take care of our own, even the ones who once called us dangerous." The Defiant turned toward the crisis zone, followed by a fleet of ships from species the civilized galaxy had rejected. They moved with purpose, with unity, with the absolute certainty that they would do whatever it took to survive. Behind them, the council debated. Ahead of them, another battle waited, and the most dangerous species in the galaxy flew to meet it, teeth bared and ready.